Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Sanjeev Sidana. I welcome you all on behalf of Eternal Hospital. So the topic assigned to me today is resistant hypertension. So resistant hypertension is defined as BP which remains above target while patient is receiving three class of drug which will include a thiazide type of diuretic, a long-acting calcium channel blocker, and a RAS system blocker. So this is a high-risk phenotype which lead to increasing all cause as well as cardiovascular mortality. So what is refractory hypertension? It is defined as a patient having uncontrolled blood pressure while receiving more than five drugs, which should include a thiazide type of diuretic and medullary receptor corticoid antagonist. So patient with resistant hypertension have increased risk of developing ESRD, ISD, heart failure, stroke, death as compared to treated patient with normal blood pressure. So it is found in approximately 10% of the patient who is diagnosed to have hypertension. These are the high risk characteristics which are commonly associated with patient with the resistant hypertension. These include older age, high baseline blood pressure, obesity, excessive dietary salt intake, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, LVH, black race, and female sex. So how do we evaluate? We evaluate the patient. First, we should ensure that patient is receiving adequate treatment or not, and then we should exclude pseudo resistance. Then we should identify the lifestyle factor which may contribute to resistant hypertension. Then we should discontinue some of the drugs and substance which may interfere with the treatment of blood pressure. And then we should screen the patient for secondary causes. And then we should optimize the pharmacological treatment. If still the blood pressure remains high, they can be referred for some procedure which involves the various procedures like renal denervation and other procedures. So these are the various causes for pseudo resistance, which include medication non-adherence, white coat hypertension, under-treatment, and inaccurate BP measurement. So poor adherence is very common, and retrospective analysis indicates that approximately 40% of the patient, they discontinue their medication within first year of the treatment, and after 5 to 10 year of follow-up, only less than 40% of the patient, they tend to continue their antihypertensive treatment. So adherence can be monitored by self-reporting and pill count as well as prescription refill rate, and self-reporting is basically tend to overestimate, and the more sensitive parameter for non-adherence is the therapeutic drug monitoring in the serum sample levels. So once non-adherence has been established, every effort should be made to identify barriers for the non-adherence. They may include adverse effects to the antihypertensive drugs, excessive complex drug regimen, financial limitation, and patient cognitive dysfunction. A plan for improved adherence should be developed in partnership with each patient according to his or her specific situation. So white coat effect is very common, and it is found in 20-30% of the patient with resistant hypertension. Individuals with white coat hypertension have fewer cardiovascular events than those with resistant hypertension. However, prognosis of white coat hypertensive patient, they remain poor as compared to general normotensive population. So how to evaluate patient with white coat effect? If patient's office blood pressure remain more than 140/90 and ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is available, then we can ask the patient for ambulatory 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. And if daytime average is more less than 135/85 and 24-hour average is less than 130/80, we can label the patient has got ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is not available. Then we can ask the patient to take home blood pressure monitoring, and if home blood pressure monitoring reveals that average blood pressure is less than 135/85, then we can say that these high blood pressure is due to the white coat effect. So how the blood pressure is measured at home? Have the patient perform measurement for minimum of 5 consecutive days. On each day, 3 morning and 3 evening measurement should be done approximately 1 minute apart without removing the cuff. Have the patient record the date and time of all the measurement. While calculating, we should discard the readings of first 2 days and first reading on every event, and then remaining readings are averaged out to calculate the average blood pressure. So these are the various lifestyle factors which are responsible for hypertension. They include weight reduction, and dietary components, reduced sodium intake, physical activity, and alcohol moderation. The ideal body weight should be between 20 to 25 kilogram per meter square. The diet should be rich in fruits, vegetables, and fiber, but low in the fat. The dietary sodium should be restricted to less than 6 gram of the sodium chloride or less than 2.4 gram of the sodium per day. Regular physical activity should include at least 30 minutes of brisk walk or at least for 5 days per week. And alcohol allowed should not be more than 3 units per day in men and 2 units per day in women. These are the various drugs which can lead to increase in blood pressure. They include non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, selective COX-2 inhibitor, sympathetomimetic drugs like decongestant and abuse of cocaine, stimulants like amphetamines, alcohol, oral contraceptives, cyclosporin, erythropoietin, natural licorice, and various herbs like ephedra. Now coming to secondary causes, they should be considered. We should always try to consider and rule out the secondary causes of blood pressure in the patients with resistant hypertension, especially patient present with hypertensive emergencies or patient present at the age of less than 30 years. And these patients should undergo evaluation for rule out of secondary causes. These are the various secondary causes which can be found in patients with resistant hypertension. These include obstructive sleep apnea, which can be diagnosed by the sleep study, and it can be treated with CPAP. Primary aldosteronism found in 7 to 20% of the patient, and they can be diagnosed with the serum aldosterone level and plasma renin level, and they can be treated with spironolactone, eplerenone, and surgical rejection of the tumor if it is found. And renal artery stenosis is found in 2 to 25% of the patient. It can be diagnosed with the renal ultrasound and Doppler studies, and that can be confirmed with magnetic resonance angiography and renal revascularization in selected patient that can help in reduction of blood pressure. And renal pericardial disease is found in 1 to 2% of the patient and is diagnosed by renal serum creatinine. And drug-induced or alcohol heavy alcohol intake can be diagnosed by history taking, and thyroid disorder can be diagnosed by measurement of thyroid hormones, and they are found in less than 1% of the patient. So first, we should ensure that patient is taking adequate drugs of all the three class, that is long-acting CCB, RAS inhibitor, and a thiazide type of diuretic in adequate doses. And chlorthalidone is preferred over hydrochlorothiazide given its superior efficacy and likely related to its longer half-life. In 2011, NICE guidelines stated that indapamide should be given preference over hydrochlorothiazide. The fourth drug, now we know that large body of literature demonstrate that aldosterone excess is common in patients with resistant hypertension, especially which is associated with obesity. Abdominal adipocytes are hormonally active and stimulate the secretion of aldosterone. Resistant hypertension is attributable to large part due to the excess fluid accumulation mediated by aldosterone. So Pathway 2 trial was conducted, and it clearly showed that efficacy of spironolactone over the other drugs like bisoprolol and dexamethasone. Percentage of the patient with controlled BP were 58% in spironolactone group and 22% in the placebo group, 43% in the bisoprolol group, and 41% in the dexazone group. OSA is common in patients with resistant hypertension, which may be due to the fluid accumulation in the parapharyngeal lesion, and spironolactone reduces the severity of OSA by about 50%. Now coming to intervention. The efferent sympathetic outflow to the kidney actually stimulates the release of renin, increase in the tubular sodium resorption, and reduces the renal blood flow. And efferent signal from the kidney may modulate the central sympathetic outflow and increases in the neurogenic hypertension. So we can control the blood pressure with the renal denervation, and which was first tested in Simplicity 2 hypertension trial, and which involved 106 patients. And you can see the results at 6 months. There was almost 32 millimeter of mercury reduction in the renal denervation group, and at 36 months there were 33 millimeter of mercury reduction as compared to control group. So the finding of these trial could not be confirmed in the larger Simplicity 3 trial. It was a prospective double-blind randomized trial, it was sham control, and you can see the results, primary efficacy endpoint and secondary efficacy endpoint. Primary efficacy endpoint was the office BP recording, and secondary efficacy endpoint was the 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. And you can see that both the group this renal denervation did not show any significant reduction in the blood pressure in the neither in the primary efficacy endpoint nor in the secondary efficacy endpoint. Some points which are responsible for failure of this trial could be more extensive screening, which required definite diagnosis, and higher number of blood pressure higher number of patients were using aldosterone, operator experience may have played a role, and 39% of the patient, they actually underwent medication change during the trial, and partial denervation may be responsible. And as we know that at more than 14 ablation should be done for the treatment of renal denervation. So current many techniques are being evaluated, like Medtronic spiral catheter, Enlighten by St. Jude, Wessex by Boston, One Shot Covidian, Paradise Record, and Persirin. Paradise Record actually is ultrasound based catheter, and the Persirin ablates the renal sympathetic fibers by alcohol. So now coming to carotid receptor activation. The stress mechanism receptor, they are located in the carotid sinus and aortic arch, and when they are activated, their signals are transmitted to nucleus tractus solitarius in the medulla via glossopharyngeal nerve. And if we activate, if we increase the nerve traffic from these baroreceptor to the brainstem, then that can lead to reduction in the sympathetic blood flow and the blood pressure. So this device was tested in pivotal Rios trial, and the 5 points which were tested in this trial was the device safety, the procedure safety, acute systolic blood pressure reduction, and sustained BP reduction at 12 months, and the bed safety. So these trial actually met 3 out of 5 endpoints were match in the primary efficacy endpoint, and there was no significant reduction in blood pressure at 6 months, but patient had sustained blood pressure response at 1 year, and device efficacy was established. And the newer device, which is Barotism Neo, it is a second generation smaller device with longer lasting battery, and only one electrode is placed in the right sinus, and unilateral stimulation is sufficient. Nemo pivotal trial of 310 patients is underway, and initial XR1 verification study showed that it can lead to reduction of 26 by 12 millimeter of mercury blood pressure reduction. So if patient are still not responding, then arterial venous fistula is a option, and it is a ROX coupler device which creates a fistula between iliac artery and iliac vein, and by reducing the systemic vascular resistance by moving blood into high capacitance venous system, it reduces the blood pressure. It creates a 4 millimeter shunt in iliac artery and iliac vein. It was evaluated in ROX control hypertension trial, and out of 83 patients, and 44 underwent implantation of coupler device, and it was associated with 26 millimeter of mercury reduction of blood pressure versus 3.7 millimeter in medically treated group. 10 patients in the active arm had prior unsuccessful renal denervation, and complication rates were high. There were 25 procedure or device related complication, and 27% of the patient, they had lower limb edema, and some patients were diagnosed to have iliac vein stenosis, and 11 patients required venoplasty and stenting, and concern about high output cardiac failure remains. And these are the some other technique, like decompression of the medulla by neurosurgical procedure, and this also can lead to sustained reduction in systolic as well as diastolic blood pressure. But these therapy need to be confirmed in larger trials. So these are the current guideline recommendation. Mineralocorticoid dexazosin should be considered. It is given its class 2A indication, and device therapy currently is given a class 2B indication. So this is, to summarize, this is how we evaluate the patient with resistant hypertension. If BP exceeds and more than target, and patient is using 3 medication, then first step is that whether accurate BP is being measured or not. The second step is healthy lifestyle, and third step is adherence, and fourth step is we should try to exclude the drugs which increases the blood pressure. Then next step is whether patient is receiving diuretic in the regimen or not, and then secondary causes of blood pressure should be excluded. And if all these is excluded, then patient is labeled as having resistant hypertension. So the take-home message is diagnosis of true resistant hypertension is requires the exclusion of pseudo-resistant hypertension. Patient should be on a diuretic, which is thiazide type of diuretic, ACE inhibitor or ARB, and long-acting calcium channel blockers. There is convincing evidence that spironolactone should be the fourth drug. Later, other drugs like alpha blocker, beta blocker, vasodilator, central-acting sympathetolytic drugs can be used, and device therapies are being evaluated and may play a role in the future for the managing the patient with resistant hypertension. Thank you.